So here we are. Hello, this is Meet the Problem Solvers. I'm Judy Perlman. My guest tonight, you may remember, is Stephanie Brown. Stephanie was here back in August, and we had a very interesting conversation, and we decided we needed to roll it forward and do it again, take it to the next step. Stephanie is the CEO of Casa Myrna in Boston. And you know what? I'm going to let you explain who you are, what you do, and frame it up, and then we'll take the conversation from there.
Sure. So Casa Myrna is a domestic violence organization. We're based in Boston, but there are domestic violence organizations all across the state. There's one even here in Cambridge, Transition House, which was the first domestic violence organization to open up in Boston, or in Massachusetts. And so we work with survivors of domestic violence. We work with friends and family, and anybody who's in it with us to end domestic violence. We believe at Casa Myrna that every relationship should be safe and healthy. And so all of our work is to fulfill that vision. We want to end domestic violence, and we'd love to go out of business.
Yeah, it'd be great if you, remember when we used to worry about people feeling unsafe? And exactly.
Yeah.
So again, frame us up again a little bit. Like, what is domestic violence? Who does it happen to? Is it, targeted to one group? Just put us in your picture a little bit, Steph.
So domestic violence happens to everybody. I think that's something for the last 40 years that we've been working to help people really understand, is that no one is exempt from domestic violence. So it happens regardless of race, class, education, sexual orientation, zip code, all of it. So domestic violence affects everybody. Domestic violence is, we consider it's a pattern of control. One person tries to gain and maintain control over the other person in their relationship. You don't have to be married. It could be between two people who have an intimate partnership. At Casa Myrna, we work with families as well. So it could be like a parent and a teenager, or it could be other family members. And basically the idea is that one person is trying to gain and maintain control over the other person. And they use forms of abuse to do it. I think one of the misconceptions around domestic violence is that it's only physical, or that it isn't domestic violence until it's physical. So one of the things that we really think it's important for people to understand is that domestic violence is emotional and psychological abuse, it's financial abuse, and it's physical violence.
Got it. Yeah. So last time we were here, we talked about a few different things, but one of the things we didn't really get to was talking about sort of the evolution of the field and what you've learned and how things have changed, and really what it looks like to have a safe operating space. Yeah. So can you kind of put us in that picture?
Sure. I think we've learned a lot over the last 40 to 45 years about domestic violence. And for the most part, for the last 35 years, almost 40 years, it's been our idea that we have to stay hidden to be able to do this work. And clearly, I think everyone has heard about domestic violence murders that happen in our state, across the country. And so abusers can be lethal. They can be very dangerous. And so there is a lot to this idea that we have to have confidential programs. And so we do have our residential programs are confidential. Generally neighbors know who's there, but that's about it. But we've been shifting our focus around where we work to work more within the community, because the rates of domestic violence have not gone down over the last 40 years. And so what we've been doing about remaining hidden, talking about it, but not being in the community, not having, a sign over our door that says, come talk to us, come spend time with us. That's the direction that we're going now, because what we've been doing hasn't worked. We have been able to support thousands and thousands of survivors, but we're not ending it. And so abuse is just as bad as it used to be.
So that's really interesting. So you're changing some of your tactics.
Yep.
And last time you were here, we were talking about speaking at business groups, speaking at other community collaborations, just sort of normalizing, not normalizing violence, but normalizing the need to identify it and take steps.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, and you know what, that's one of the things that we wanted to do tonight, was kind of acknowledge how stressful and anxiety producing it is if you have a friend or a colleague or a classmate that you suspect things are really not okay with. That puts a lot of pressure on you, but also, how do you know what to do? And so we actually wanted to talk a little bit, talk a lot, about what are some of the things to do. And we're actually going to turn on our phone line. So if you feel like you want to call, and talk with Stephanie about a situation or that you're facing or that you're considering, call ahead and we'll put you on. And I think I even know I know which button to do. So we can take your call. I'm pretty confident.
We can try.
We can try. So we'll leave the phone number up. But let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, I'm sure this happens all the time, that you have a colleague or a friend or somebody comes in with a bruise and a person is sensing that something is amiss and really not sure what to do.
Yeah.
Help us understand in that person's shoes what they can do.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing is to really pay attention to people in your life, your relationships. And so you rarely get something as obvious as bruising, or for somebody to say like, oh, I think I'm not safe in my relationship. I think generally domestic violence is really hidden and people are afraid to talk about it for many reasons. One reason is that abusers can be very dangerous and they threaten their victims not to talk about it and to keep it a secret. But if you suspect somebody, like think about what you're seeing in that relationship. So if you have, somebody that you've been close to is slowly starting to retreat and is becoming more and more isolated, perhaps because their partner says, oh, your friends don't like me, let's not hang out with them. Or I don't want to share time with you, I just want to spend time, I don't want to share you with with your friends, I just want to spend time with you. That often domestic violence relationships start with that. And so if you're starting to lose touch with a friend and there's no real reason for it, if they can't really talk about why, or if they just sort of say, oh, I'm just going to spend more time, with my partner, I think those are red flags for us. Definitely if somebody, if you're a colleague, if somebody is coming late into work all the time, if they used to be, productive and alert during, on the job, and then you start to see that they're coming in late, that they're distracted, that they're sleepy, it's often because abusers sabotage people's ability to work. And so they may keep them up in the middle of the night. They may be worrying. They may not be able to think clearly. And so that affects their job performance. So if you're seeing things that just don't quite seem right, like listen to your gut. And it's always okay to say to somebody, like, hey, what's going on? Like, I miss you. You seem distracted. I haven't seen you in a while. Like, you're starting to distance yourself. What's going on? And oftentimes, like, a survivor will tell you, nothing, everything's fine. Because it's not safe to talk about it, because we don't create a climate where it's safe to talk about it. We always say, start with just the conversation, like naming what you're seeing, and then leaving it open. And so somebody may say, everything's fine. Don't bother. I'm doing fine. And if that's the case, then just sort of say, well, you can always talk to me. Like, I'm here for you. I support you. I hope you're safe. If you need anything, come back to me. Because you always want to leave the door open for folks instead of saying, okay, well, I asked you once and now I'm never going to say anything again.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And we were talking about sort of normalizing it in a workplace that people have concerns that sometimes you actually do need some help.
Right.
And to normalize that we're a workplace where we care about each other.
Yep.
And that you could even, actually, I'm going to do it right now if I can. I'm going to put up information about SafeLink, which is, actually, why don't you tell us what SafeLink is, Steph?
Sure. So SafeLink is a program of Casa Myrna. It's the statewide domestic violence hotline. And so anybody can call at any time. It's 24/7. All the calls are anonymous and confidential, so we don't know who's calling us. All we know is what you say on the other side of, the other end of the line. We can take calls in English and Spanish and Portuguese, and through a language line, any other language. And so it's a place for you to call if you feel unsafe or if you just want to talk about what might be going on in your relationship. It's a place to call if you're an employer and you're not sure what to do, if you're a friend or a family member and you have some questions, if you want to get connected to resources. It's statewide, and so we can connect people to resources all across the state.
So let's just go back to that scenario here of I'm really concerned. The person down the hall from me seems distracted, fearful, late, whatever. Something is going on with this person, and I'm not even sure how to talk about it. I might call SafeLink, right? And
Absolutely.
say, because you have trained people to understand all aspects of violence. And
Right.
so that person might be able to coach me through how to raise this in a way that is not distressing, not
Right.
confrontational, because
Right.
the last thing you want to do, or that I would want to do, or that anybody would want to do, sort of drive someone back into like, oh, I have to be more circumspect, I have to hide this even better.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. So anybody can call SafeLink, right? If you're not quite sure how do I approach the subject, if what I'm seeing, could it be domestic violence,
Yeah.
or is it just an unhealthy relationship, or am I making things up? Call SafeLink and they can role play with you. They can help you think about
Yeah.
what you might say to somebody. Because it's really scary. I mean, I recognize that. It's scary for me too when it's somebody in my life. What do you say and how do you say it?
Right.
Because you don't want to damage that relationship, but you
Right.
also really want to support the person.
Right. And the one and done thing of like, well, I tried. You don't want to be that person
Right.
and say, well, I tried. You want to say, okay, I have to stay present in this, but if I'm not sure what to do, there's a place for me to turn. And that
Right.
is really cool.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you're looking for an excuse to be able to broach the subject, you can say you were watching Judy Perlman's TV show and you heard about domestic violence, and I'm really, I just learned something about domestic violence and I'm really worried. I
Yeah.
think that you might be, in an unhealthy relationship.
What did we have? 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men are
Yeah.
victims of severe physical domestic violence in their life.
Right.
I mean, that means that's really a big number.
Yep. It's a lot of people.
So this is not like
Right.
isolated and
Right.
like, oh, couldn't possibly be.
Right.
This is, I mean, what I would say also is like, trust your gut. If you really sense that something is amiss with someone that you care about, there's nothing wrong with telling them that. I
Right.
care about you and I'm concerned.
Right.
And here's the number for SafeLink.
Right.
I mean, that's the thing. That's another thing to do is to
Exactly.
give them, to get the support you need as that supportive person in their life,
Yeah.
but to give them the information so that they may not want to talk about it with you right then
Right.
in the lunchroom,
Right.
but they may want to do it later.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the things that you mentioned earlier was, sort of within a work setting, not wanting to target the one person that you think might be in an unhealthy or in an abusive relationship.
Right.
And I think that, it's also okay. One of the things that we need to end this is for people to be talking about domestic violence,
Right.
not talking about individual people who might be victimized, but by talking about domestic
Right.
violence in general.
Right.
And so, it's not okay. We won't tolerate domestic violence jokes or sort of misogyny or like jokes against, about women.
Right.
And so trying to create this culture where you say, we support survivors and everybody should be in a healthy relationship, and you sort of do it generically,
Right.
kind of throughout your workplace or throughout your faith community or your school or,
Right.
whatever community you're a part of. Because the more we talk about it, the less hidden it is, and then becomes less tolerance, and that also sends the message to survivors that like what I'm going through isn't okay, and that other people are saying
Right.
it isn't okay.
Right. And we were laughing about how annoying it can be in your workplace when you get an
Yeah.
email and it's like, I know how to fill that form out. You don't have to remind me. But by the same token, sending out an email to everyone that says, came upon this important resource, wanted to
Right.
make sure people knew about it. That can again be kind of like a low barrier way to get that
Yeah.
information to that person who you
Exactly.
really want to get it to without going in and going, hello, I'm really concerned about you.
Right, exactly.
Which has its own risks.
Right.
Seriously, yeah.
Right.
So Steph, what's the world going to look like? What's it going to look like when we really have made a difference? What's it going to feel like and look like?
Well, I think, a lot of the work that we do and we've been focusing on recently is with young people, because we recognize that a lot of young people don't know what a healthy relationship looks like. So it's really hard to talk about what an unhealthy relationship looks like if you don't have if you don't understand sort of the difference between healthy and unhealthy. And so in our world, in our future world, young people would know what a healthy relationship looks like. They would have, boundaries. They'd set boundaries for themselves, and they would set expectations for their relationship. And that when somebody crosses those boundaries or doesn't fulfill the expectation of what they want in a relationship, that they would walk away from it. We have 12 peer leaders who we train to teach other young people about dating violence. So they go into schools and after-school programs programs and work with other young people. And they have all said the difference that the training that they're going through has made in their lives, because now they have much stronger boundaries and expectations for their relationships with their friends, with significant others, with their family, like with their parents. And so they're able to articulate like what's okay and what's not okay. When before, when you don't know what a healthy relationship looks like, it's really hard to articulate where those boundaries are. And it's really important, like that we all have those.
Yeah, that's really amazing. So we need to do train the trainer stuff to get everyone healthier.
Absolutely.
I mean, and you know, some of my family members swim in waters with a lot of people who are in transition or non-binary, and I sense that there's another area for risk that either on a lot of levels, either within an intimate relationship or with people who are really uncomfortable with what you're doing if you are in transition. Do you see a lot of that?
We do. I think, you know, one of the things, so domestic violence affects everybody. And rates of domestic violence could, you know, maybe higher for LGBTQIA survivors or folks. They could also be higher for Black women and for immigrants. But what we're really seeing is that being part of those communities, abusers can use them to further entrench somebody in an abusive relationship. So if you're in transition, if you're, you know, lesbian, gay, bisexual, that often abusers use that because folks may not have come out yet to people in their family or at work. And so abusers use that and hold that threat. And so it's just another way to entrench somebody in an abusive relationship. And so we find that it's much, much harder if you are in an abusive relationship, if you're part of a marginalized community, to get out of it, because the abuser they use every tool they possibly can to gain control over you and to keep that control.
To keep you isolated and marginalized.
Right.
Well, this is a kind of a serious topic. This is Meet the Problem Solvers. I'm Judy Perlman, and this is Stephanie Brown from Casa Myrna here back. We were laughing like hyenas last time you came. This one has been less hilarity laden, but I mean, it's very serious stuff. I don't mean to make light of it.
Right. But you do have to laugh. Not laugh about domestic violence, but you have to be able to laugh.
Yeah, you have to live your life.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Well, keep those cards and letters and calls coming. Feel free if you have a question and you'd like to run it by Stephanie. Here's the number. I think it's up. Looks like it is.
There's a number up there.
Yeah, there is a number. So what else have we talked about? So sort of the takeaway piece. What it is that, I mean, I have asked you here twice because this is a really important issue, and I do feel like the platform of a TV show and a podcast is an interesting way to get into people's lives and minds and hearts some of the opportunities that they may feel trapped themselves, or as I keep feeling so strongly, like sympathetic for someone who senses that something is amiss and doesn't know what to do. So talk us again through some of the tools and the takeaways, and how does someone leave this conversation between me and Stephanie feeling like, I think I can do something different and help my friend, my mother, my sister.
So always have the safe link number because you can always call and you can give it to somebody else. It's also really important to remember that you want to maintain a relationship with somebody that you either suspect or you know is a survivor of domestic violence. So you want to tell them it's not your fault. I know that this is really scary. Call SafeLink, call somebody for support. But overall, it's not your fault. I love you, I support you, I care about you. Oftentimes, victims are forced to separate from the other supports in their lives. And so they do become more and more isolated. And sometimes it's really difficult as a friend or a family member of somebody who basically seems to refuse to want to be around you and just pulls themselves away from you and from a relationship that you have. It's really hard to maintain that relationship. But it is really important to keep checking in with them, even if they don't want to hang out with you, even if you don't go to the movies together anymore, even if you don't talk on the phone, to reach out and to let them know that you are there for them. Because one day they will call you and they will tell you that they need your support. And so keep that that relationship, keep those lines of communication open with survivors, even if you feel like in the moment it's not reciprocated. It can be really frustrating, but you're doing the right thing by just keeping up with it.
Mm-hmm. And I think we go back to also the one-on-one relationship, but also the normalizing in a community, whether it's a faith community or a workplace.
Yep.
This is a thing that happens. 1 in 4 women, 1 in 7 men. This is really common.
Yep.
And so we have to normalize our ability to speak to it, as sad as it is, as distressing as it is.
Yep.
It's a fact.
Right.
So why don't we just put that number up again for a second? This is the call-in number that's up there now. And this is the phone number 877-785-2020. That's the statewide free, toll-free domestic violence hotline. Questions that you have about your own life, questions that you have about other people in your life, questions about how to bring it up in your community or in a relationship. And what else do we say? Speak out, volunteer, organize a drive. Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about some of that kind of stuff.
Sure. So domestic violence organizations, whether it's Casa Myrna, Transition House, Respond, anybody across the state can really use support because we're not well funded. We do a lot of work 24/7, and we want our community to work with us on this.
Right.
And so a lot of ways to get involved. Like, you don't have to write a check. You can do a drive. So around the holidays, around Mother's Day, back to school, we're constantly looking for sheets and pillows and bedding and children's toys and coats and clothes and those things.
And let's just specify why.
Yeah.
Because for many people, when they finally do leave, they just leave. They have to leave. They see the moment and they leave everything behind.
Right.
So they don't have anything. When they get to the safe space that they're going to occupy.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that transition for people.
Sure. So we work at Casa Myrna. We work with about 60 families a year in our residential programs. And when they come in, like Judy said, they've either sort of been through homelessness and been in shelter programs for a number of years, or they are leaving their home and they are fleeing. And so it's in the middle of the night. It's right after collecting the kids from schools, but they just show up. In our programs, we meet with them, and they've got generally nothing, maybe a suitcase, maybe a backpack. And so we work to make sure that they have food, to make sure that they have public benefits, to make sure that they get everything that they need. But we make sure they have clothes, that they have, every family in a shelter program has their own room. And then they share a kitchen, and, we've got kitchen supplies in there, and they share a bathroom and living space. But we've got, when they come in, they want things that are their own.
Yeah.
And so, folks want their own clothes, they want their own coats, they want them in the colors that they like. They don't just want something that someone has given to them that feels completely impersonal to them. And so we are always looking for folks to do drives. Similarly, when folks move out of shelter, or if they've been living with their abuser and they move into their own housing away from that abusive household, they again often leave with nothing. And so while we can't store furniture, we definitely take gift cards so that we can help people with cleaning supplies, with air mattresses. We connect them with furniture banks. But it's really important when folks move into their own housing, whether it's from shelter or from an abusive, directly from their abusive household, that they are able to move in. And the kids want their stuffed animals and their, their backpacks and lunchbox and
given
all
what
those.
they've been through, they kind of need the trappings of a household to have a sense of normalcy and moving forward.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have some young people who do drives at their schools.
That's nice.
Around the holidays, it's always easy, but we need it, all year round.
All year round, that's right.
Right. We also like to celebrate, mothers and fathers who have been abused and who are doing everything they can to keep their kids safe. Because these folks have some strength. Like, these are strong, resilient people who do whatever they can to keep their families safe. And so we like to celebrate them during the holidays and during, Mother's and Father's Days. Back to school, we do backpack drives so that the kids have all the supplies that they need for back to school. I actually did backpacks for 2 or 3 kids this last year, and I forgot how expensive school supplies are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's really hard
Yeah,
for a family
it's a real
like
thing. Yeah,
Right,
you have 3 kids. Yeah, it's a lot of
expensive.
what are they? Mechanical pencils. Huh? Why do they have to use mechanical pencils? But they have to have mechanical pencils.
Exactly. Right. But all of our programs can use volunteers. So if
Yeah.
you've got some skills that you'd like to lend, we need folks who can, read to kids, do homework with young folks after school. If you're a photographer and you'd love to teach a class to a group of survivors, we would love that. Graphic design. We've had
Nice.
people who are, really good at cooking have come in and cooked for families, or they'll hold a cooking and nutrition class. So we really, again, want this to be a community. We want it to be community work. And so we encourage folks from our community to come in and get involved with
Yeah.
the domestic violence organizations.
Good. Well, thank you. Let's go back for one last time on the SafeLink slide, and then hope you get that number down. And now then we're just going to say once again, this is, let's take this off. Phone off. There we go. There's Meet the Problem Solvers. We would love your feedback, your thoughts, your ideas and suggestions for future guests, or as we just did, bringing back a guest like Stephanie to dig a little more deeply into an important topic. And this has just been an amazing journey to invite guests on to dig deeply into the worlds that you occupy with passion and commitment and energy and creative solutions. So
Appreciate it.
yeah, really fun and fun. It is fun,
It is.
even though it's such a sad and difficult topic.
Right.
Yeah.
I could talk about this stuff all day.
Yeah, I know. You are very good at it. So thank you again. If you see something, do something. And if you don't know what to do, get the help you need to take the step to help the person in your life that you think may be at risk, because you really could be right. And if you are right, you want to be someone who's really done everything that you can.
Right. And you'll make a difference. It'll make a difference.
It will
They'll hear
make a
you.
difference, and they will feel supported.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we're good.
All right.
Okay, thank you.